Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Coal Country Podcast. Man, it has been too long. As always, I'm your host, Ian McIntyre, and I am joined today by Tyler Cobb. How you doing, Tyler? You all right?
I'm hanging in there. It's been a busy couple of weeks, as you guys can probably assume, since we haven't been able to get an episode out to you guys for about a month now. I think it was a
Yeah,
month a
I think
couple
it
of
is a
days
month.
ago.
Yeah, we got together earlier today, and I was thinking it's been about a month, which is crazy. Of course, you guys know we're students. We got finals coming up. We got exams. We're all over the place. Some of us are moving out. I'm moving out. I'm graduating. So we got a lot of stuff going on in our lives. We can't record every week, but over the summer, it's going to be a lot more consistent. So you guys can look forward to that. Should be fun. We'll keep using our streaming platform. We still got the overlay, which I think y'all like. We like it.
hmm
But yeah, anything interesting going on over there? I know you got your exams going.
I'm done. So I go back to my hometown of Buffalo, West Virginia, in tomorrow. So I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Yeah. So we're literally recording Thursday night, and it's going to come out Friday. So yeah, you're going to be leaving when this video comes out.
Yep.
How far away is Buffalo? I keep forgetting.
It's about a 3-hour drive from Morgantown.
Dude, yeah, that's crazy. I'm only 45 minutes, so yeah, I can only imagine 3 hours. That's where the heart of the state is, man. You got your most loyal fans in places where it's not feasible to go to Morgantown. A lot of them can't make it there, but that's where the heart of the state is.
Indeed. Indeed.
All right, let's dive into some college football. So
Finally, it's getting closer. We only got 100 some days left until Texas versus Ohio State, which kicks off the college football year, and
yeah,
then Robert Morris versus West Virginia, which kicks off the year for us. So
I think.
today we're going. What is
Oh,
it?
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're good.
I saw last week. I think the marching band account posted only 18 more Saturdays until pregame.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
man, it's getting closer. You see those posts, and you're like, dude, that's so far away. Um,
See, yep.
you don't realize how fast it creeps up on you, which I'm excited. And looking at our roster, we have reason to be excited. So we did a little bit of a breakdown earlier before we started recording. I'm obviously not fully up to speed on all of our transfers, but I know some names. I know some guys out there. I know I wanted to let you take the lead on this because we got a lot of breaking down to do on our current roster.
A lot of breaking down to do. It's been, like we said, several weeks, so a lot has happened. A lot of roster turnover. I think 70 some new guys coming in. So we're going to do a little bit of a depth chart, projected rosters, and starters for you guys today. We're just going to go position group by position group, starting with probably the most important one on the field, which is quarterback. And there's two names that we need to know, and we probably already do know, and that's Nico Markiel, who we're all very familiar with, and then Texas A&M transfer Jalen Henderson. Now, I still think Nico Markiel he's ahead of Henderson in terms of who will be quarterback one come August. It's still close, though. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, nothing will surprise me. If Nico is the starter come Robert Morris or Jalen, neither will, come out of nowhere. But I do like Nico. I think we all remember the Arizona game. He went 18 for 22, 198 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He was very, very consistent in that game. His entire last year, he threw the ball 66 or completed 66% of his passes, had a total of 434 yards, 5 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. One of those was a 50-50 ball in the Penn State game. We won't really consider that one. But either way, he's got a lot of upside. I like what our quarterback room has. And if you've listened to Rich Rod, he has openly said that this is pretty much the room he feels most comfortable about. And I think that's because of the competition that Henderson and Nico are having. Iron sharpens iron. So they're going to compete against one another for that starting spot and make each other better. Henderson, if you look at what he has done, he didn't play any games last year. He's dealt with some injury issues, but in 2023, he completed 67, nearly 68% of his passes, had 800 yards, threw 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. His best game was probably either versus LSU or Abilene Christian. LSU, he threw 25 for 35, nearly 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. But he threw 71% completion percentage. He can throw the deep ball. He can run. So this is going to be a fun room to watch through fall camp. Who do you still think Nico starts come August?
I was going to say everyone should fully expect Nico to get the starting job. I think he fits Rich Rod's mold for a quarterback perfectly. He's already proven himself on the field. As you said, the Arizona game last year, even though it's a really tight battle with Henderson. And as you said, Henderson is good in his own right, but I think the experience will get him the nod, will get Nico the nod to start.
Yeah, Henderson has a couple, or he's a little behind in games that he's actually played in. However, they're very similar in that they've both played a backup role for the majority of their career, and they're both ready to start. So I expect that battle to be kind of heated really up until Saturday of Robert Morris, and that's about how it'll be.
And honestly, it's a very feely time for, like, this year especially. It's year one of Rich Rod. There are going to be a lot of experiments going on, and if you see things not working out, you could see Henderson take the field mid-season. And it's very possible, especially if we don't get to where we want to be in the first 5 games or so. It's possible you can see Henderson get a start or two.
What I think matters is that they both fit the system that Rich Rod brings. He's talked a lot about how they don't necessarily need to be the fastest guy out on the field, but his quarterbacks need to be willing runners. We saw that a lot with Tyler Huff at Jack State last year, and I think you're going to see that. And we've seen before firsthand that Nico is a willing runner, and if you've watched Jalen Henderson tape, he's a willing runner as well. So that brings us to the actual runners and the running backs, and who I think takes a big step next year is Jaheim White. He's going to be our running back one. That's pretty much been in stone since they brought Rich Rod in, and we finally found out that Jaheim was going to end up staying in the old gold and blue. I think he's going to take a massive step. In 2024, he had 149 carries, 845 yards, just under 6 yards a carry, 7 touchdowns. He had a receiving touchdown. He's going to take a big step. I would not be surprised if you see him reach 1,000 yards next year. He's going to be carrying a pretty large load. However, that doesn't mean he doesn't have somebody to back him up. We just brought in SMU transfer running back a couple days ago, Jalen Knighton. He backed up – excuse me, I can't even remember his name. SMU's running back last year. He was the backup to start the year, got injured in pretty early in the season, either game 2 or game 3. But his 2023 season, he had a solid season, 136 carries, 745 yards, about 5.5 yards carry, and 7 touchdowns as well. He's 5'10", 185, and then you look at Jaheim, he's 5'7", 195. So they're both smaller running backs. We don't have that big bruiser. It's not going to be a thunder and lightning like Jaheim and CJ was last year. But I think you're going to have lightning in a bottle between the two of them. If Jaheim needs to go off, Jalen Knighton's going to come in and he's going to play some solid relief, and he's going to get some carries. There's a lot of running in Rich Rod's offense, and Jaheim can't take them all. Jalen Knighton's an excellent transfer that I expect to have a big year as well. And then you've got Dior Hubbard and Ty Edwards behind them, who, even though they're likely going to be 3 and 4 on the depth chart, and then Cannon Cancer that we just brought in as well, like I expect all 5 of those guys to end up with carries next year, even if it's just a couple a game. Rich Rod does a lot of running, and he has a very pickup offense, hurry up, speed. He just likes to go. And so Jaheim, Jalen Knighton, they're both going to get tired. They're going to need some relief. Hubbard and Ty Edwards, I think they'll be solid 3 and 4s off the bench. I really don't have anything else to say about the running back room. That's the one I have felt pretty good about outside of quarterback room because we do have Jaheim White.
Mhm.
I was a little worried when Chad Scott went to Texas whether or not we'd actually be able to retain Jaheim White, but we did. You bring in Jalen Knighton, you have Dior Hubbard, you have Ty Edwards. I will say one thing I was a little shocked of was that LJ Turner, who Rich Rod brought in during the fall or the winter cycle of the transfer portal, he ended up actually being one of the cuts from the roster because of the roster limitations being cut down. I thought LJ Turner was going to be a guy that could come in and fill the backup spot behind Jaheim White, but he is no longer on the roster. So that's interesting. But Jaheim, Jalen Knighton, Dior Hubbard, Ty Edwards, that's a solid running back room.
Yeah. A thing that excites me about Jaheim, besides the fact that I do believe, and I agree with you, that he's going to take a big step forward being RB1 this year, and having a more pronounced role. Another thing that excited me about him was the role that he played, or I think he played in the transfer portal. Because him staying, like we made an appreciation post for him on X, and him staying was, I think, a big contributing factor to guys in the spring portal coming, or guys staying back. Like I think he was a voice of reason along with Rich Rod. He was part of the recruiting process. So shout out to Jaheim for that.
Yeah. And I think a huge reason he stayed was that he also saw Nico and Rodney stay. I think if one or both of them would have left, it would have, kind of leaded the way towards him leaving. And I'm glad that, Rich Rod and his staff were able to retain him despite Chad leaving after the winter portal and prior to the spring portal, because he still could have very well left and headed to Texas if Texas offered him, because he's a good running back. Jaheim's going to have a solid year. He's going to be one of the better running backs in the Big 12, if not in the nation. Like he is the headline guy of this West Virginia team in 2025. That brings us to the wide receiver room, which has had a lot of turnover. I think we're all familiar with Hudson Clement leaving, Traylon Ray leaving. You had a lot of guys hit the portal. So basically, outside of Rodney Gallagher and Preston Fox, this is an entirely new wide receiver room. However, I like where our wide receiver room is at, and that is mainly because of who will likely be wide receiver one, who Rich Rod is familiar with, and that's Jacksonville State transfer Cam Vaughn. Cam Vaughn, with 48 receptions last year, had 803 yards, 5 touchdowns. There's not a ton of like Rich Rod loves to run the ball and he'll take deep shots, but there's not a ton of targets to his receivers. But Cam Vaughn knows how to get open. He knows how to catch the ball. He's 6'2", 190, tall, physical wide receiver that can get downfield in a hurry. He's going to be that wide receiver one. So if there's one guy that you want to look forward to in the wide receiver room come 2025, it's going to be Cam Vaughn from Jacksonville State. That is probably the biggest. There's a couple guys that we'll get to here in a little bit as we get to the rest of the offense, the defense. But as far as guys that are going to come in and make the most impact on this season in particular, I think Cam Vaughn's up there, especially because he's only a freshman. We'll likely have him for a while if he doesn't transfer out, today's modern college landscape. Outside of that, we're both familiar with Rodney Gallagher and Jaden Bray. Those are the other two projected starters in my eyes. I think it'll be Cam Vaughn, Rodney Gallagher, and Jaden Bray. Jaden Bray was a guy last year that we all thought would be, kind of come out and be a solid wide receiver, if not be named wide receiver one behind or in front of Hudson Clement and Traylon Ray. He would still at least be a solid player, but he dealt with some injury issues. He's going to be back. I liked what I saw out of tape from him last spring. Like we said, he's dealt with injury, so he didn't have a ton of production in 2024, but I still think he has he'll develop into something better than what we saw out of him. And then Rodney, like Jaheim, I think has the most potential to make the biggest jump from where they were last year to this year. Rodney has all the skill and all the talent to develop. He has just not seen enough touches. He got his first touchdown last year against Kansas. I think a big thing with Neal and receivers was if they weren't going to willing to do the dirty work, like blocking, or like we saw that with Jaheim in 2023. Jaheim didn't get a ton of touches until he learned how to block. I think that was something Rodney needed to work on, was blocking as a wide receiver, especially because now in Rich Rod's offense, there's a lot of blocking as a wide receiver. But last year, he still made a slight jump from where he was in 2023. I expect him to make another jump in 2024 and be either wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. I think you'll see him start, though. And Rich Rod has talked highly on Rodney Gallagher and being one of the more veteran guys in the group. P. Fox is back. We all know P. Fox. I don't know how big of a role Preston Fox will play. However, he has, like, he can catch the ball. We all have seen the picture of the one catch that he made against Penn State where he's like laid out vertical and the guy's right there on him. So P. Fox, I think, will get some minutes and some catches. Christian Hamilton is a freshman wide receiver out of North Carolina that was a 4-star recruit. I think that's going to be a developmental project for Rich Rod over seeing a huge impact this coming year. However, I wouldn't be surprised if he got some touches as well. And then Orrin Singleton or Man Singleton from Eastern Michigan, he'll be likely backing up one of those Rodney Gallagher, Cam Vaughn, or Jaden Bray. There's a lot of wide receivers. We're not going to touch on all of them. That would be a lot of names to name and a lot of stats to go through. However, I think these 6 guys will see the most touches. You have Jeffrey Weimer and Cyrus Trough that I think will get some touches as well, just not as many. But if you want to talk about the 3 guys that I think will make the biggest impact in the wide receiver room, it's Rodney, Cam Vaughn, and Jaden Bray.
I agree.
You got anything on the wide receivers before we move on to tight end, which is probably one of the bigger groups of concern for me?
Now you basically said it all. I think Cam Vaughn has got what it takes in Rich Rod's system, like you were saying. Jaden Bray, I expect him to move up a similar level to Jaheim White, not in production, but just saying making that type of leap. I think it's his time to do that. Rodney Gallagher is going to be solid as always. I'm not really worried about the wide receiver room. We got a lot of potential there.
I'm actually not too worried about the offense. We've seen some of the guys on the offense before, and then if you go watch tape, like if you go watch Cam Vaughn tape, you'll know what I'm talking about. He just fits in the Rich Rod system. And then Rodney Gallagher is another guy that, despite not having a ton of production, he'll make a difference in this type of offense that Rich Rod likes to run. Tight end. This one's a weird one because the main guy last year was Cole Taylor. And Cole Taylor is no longer a Mountaineer. He obviously graduated. Did he get signed up on a undrafted free agent deal? I can't remember.
Not that I saw. Now, I think the university would have posted about it if he did, but
I thought that I did see something, but I could be mistaken.
Go ahead and keep talking.
Other than that, it was Cole Taylor, and that's pretty much it. Greg Generos, who we brought in last year, is still on the roster. I think he'll be more of a receiving tight end. But then we've brought in 3 other tight ends that I could not tell you who will start, and I could not tell you who will be starting at the end of the year or beginning of the year, is what I'm implying. I think this is probably one of the bigger up for grabs positions on the team.
I just found out Cole Taylor got signed by the Bengals in free agency.
Okay. He's got Joey Burrow passing him the rock.
Probably the best passer in the NFL. So
he's up there. Anyway, we bring in 3 transfers. Jacob Barrick, who's familiar with Rich Rod's system. He comes in from Jack State. Ryan Ward from North Carolina, who has not seen the field before but has a lot of upside. He came in yesterday, I believe, or the day before yesterday for you guys. And then Grayson Barnes from Northern Illinois. He is the biggest of the three, 6'5", 225 pounds. He's going to be, in my eyes, that Cole Taylor replacement. I don't think he'll be quite as good as what Cole Taylor was. Cole Taylor was like 6'7", but he will be one of those big targets that if Nico has to find somebody, he'll be there. He'll be open, even if he's not kind of guy. But I don't have a ton to say about tight end because, again, it's so up in the air that we're just going to have to wait till fall. I mean, it is still May, guy. It is still May. So tight end, we'll see. But those are the four guys that I expect to get rotating minutes. And then we'll do some more, as the season comes, or as the season gets closer, we'll figure some stuff out as Rich Rod releases stuff. More pressers come out, more tape comes out.
And also, I don't think very many people realize that just how important the tight end position is. They're a multifaceted position. So it is going to be really important to figure out, especially in practice leading up to the season, who that guy is. So we'll see.
Especially with under a Rich Rod heavy run system, there's a lot of blocking. Like tight ends have to play a major blocking role. So like a guy like Jacob Barrick that they brought in from Jack State, he knows what that is like under Rich Rod's system. So he's one of the guys that I do expect Rich Rod to be familiar with, put him into the system, get the new tight ends kind of accumulated to the system, and hopefully the tight end room will be up to par with what it was last year, even without Cole Taylor. Next is probably the biggest point of concern. However, I also think that we brought in the most talent at this position, which is a little, it almost sounds contradictory. And that's the offensive line. There's a lot of guys because there's a lot of positions. So I'm going to name the transfers, and then I'm going to name the returners, and then I'm going to give you who I think will be the starting five. And based off that, we can move on because offensive line is a little interesting at this point in time. I've seen tape and it didn't look pretty, is what I'm implying. However, we've brought in guys since then. Transfers that we've brought in: offensive tackle Tykees Crawford from Arkansas, offensive guard Walter Young-Bear from Tulsa. Kimo, excuse me if I pronounce your last name wrong, but Kimo Makaniole from LSU, Malik Agbo from Texas, and then Carson Lee from Mississippi State, Aiden Bussell from Tennessee, and then for center, Robbie Martin from, NC State. The reason I said there's the most talent there is because listen to some of the names that I named from where they were coming from. We've got Arkansas in there, LSU, Texas, Tennessee, Mississippi State. Those are SEC programs. So these guys, obviously, the SEC coaching staff saw something in them. If you go watch them, you'll see it in them as well. A guy like Walter Youngbear, if you go watch his tape, the guy knows how to block. He knows how to block. As far as returners, you've got Nick Cray, Xavier Bosley, who I expect to have a big year. Xavier Bosley actually played for Rich Rod in 23. Then we brought him in for 24, and he backed up. Let's see if I can remember my offensive line, or the offensive line from last year. Anyway, Xavier Bosley played a backup at the offensive tackle position behind Milam, and I cannot remember who our other guard was. Excuse me. We keep Landon Livingston at center from last year as well. As far as starters, I would like to say that Tykees Crawford and Xavier Bosley both start at offensive tackle. However, Nick Cray is somebody that a lot of West Virginia media is high on. I like Xavier Bosley to have that starting spot over Nick Cray. However, I wouldn't be surprised if it's either one of them. I also wouldn't be surprised if Rich Rod moves them around quite a lot. So even if the starter is only playing about 50% of the snaps and we're moving quite a lot, then I wouldn't be surprised for that either. As far as offensive guard, that one's probably the one where it's tough because on 24/7 Sports, like Carson Lee that we just brought in is listed as a projected center. However, I don't know if he's going to move over to center or if he'll stay at that inside offensive lineman that he played at Mississippi State. And then we've also got like Kimo Makanaole from LSU, Malik Agbo from Texas. Offensive guard, I think, is the hardest to predict right now. And then Landon Livingston, I think, is pretty solid to start at center. And Robbie Martin back him up. This is another one like tight end where it's just going to be wait till we get closer to fall, and that will be how we know. There's a lot of guys, a lot of talent, and I think this offensive line has the chance to be good. Do I think it'll be anywhere near what it was last year or the offensive line that it was in 2023? No. Those were guys that literally had been there their entire career, and it's going to be interesting to see because the offensive line last year and the year before, they had a lot of chemistry together. They basically went through their 4 years at West Virginia together, developed together, and then these guys are all coming in from different places trying to build some chemistry to protect Nico or Jalen Henderson in the backfield. So going to be an interesting storyline to watch is the offensive line through fall camp.
And like you were saying, those guys are coming in from all over. Chemistry is a super important part of this game, especially for a position group that just has one job to do on the field. They're all trying to do the same thing. They got to be on the same page. And I honestly think that this isn't just going to be a one-year turnaround. It's going to have to be development over multiple years, and hopefully we can home grow some guys to play on that line too. D-line's the same way. So it's going to be a work in progress for sure.
Gonna be interesting to say the least. That brings us. That's our offense. Before we move to defense, I just want to ask you, how do you feel about that being the offense? You're basically looking at, let's just say we assume starters, right? You're looking at Nico at quarterback, Jaheim at running back, Rodney, Cam Vaughn, Jaden Bray at wide receiver. We'll say Grayson Barnes from NIU at tight end right now, Tykees Crawford, Xavier Bosley, Walter Young-Bear, Kimo Makanaole, and then Aiden Bussell, Carson Lee, Landon Livingston as your inside or offensive guards and centers. Sorry, I named way too many offensive line there. But like I said, I don't know who to pick as the starters as of right now.
Just overall thoughts on the offense?
Yeah.
I feel confident in it. We have Nico, as we said, he has the experience. A lot of Nico's performance is going to depend on that O-line. And like I said, it's a work in progress. Things are going to depend on that. So they better learn how to work together quick, at least to get Nico some time in the pocket. We didn't see Nico under pressure very much. We did. We got glimpses of it. And I think he handled it pretty well for how much he had played previously. But that is going to have a lot of effect on Nico's performance. Wide receivers, it's a good thing that they're being forced to step up in the way that they are. It's going to force their development, and they're going to have to get better for us to be successful. But at the same time, are they willing to step up to the plate? And the answer, I think, is if you're playing for Rich Rod, yes, that is the answer. Tight end, again, it's a work in progress. Not only does he have to build chemistry with the receivers and the quarterback, he has to build chemistry with the O-line. So he has to build chemistry with everybody. So that's going to be a little more of a gray area. But overall, there is potential in this offense. I feel like we could be good on the ground and through the air. I expect us to be a little more run-heavy to start the year, but only time will tell. Overall, I feel confident, and even though I will say I feel more confident in the offense than the defense in the spring game, although we said in our spring game reaction that it's a spring game, they did perform well. So I feel like with Zach Alley, they have a little bit of a better foundation, and it is going to improve from last year. But overall, this offense is looking really good right now.
See, I actually think the opposite. I think the defense is more promising as of right now than what the offense will be. However, I do think that this offense has a chance to be good. And I checked something just now because I was curious. Last year, West Virginia scored 29.8 points a game, so just under 30. Rich Rod and company at Jacksonville State averaged 36.1. Now, I know that's in the Conference USA versus the Big 12. Either way, I expect our points per game to be up compared to what it was last year under Neil Brown and Chad Scott. That brings us to defense, and we've been going for about 30 minutes. So I'm going to point out some guys that I think will make a huge difference and not necessarily go through every guy on the roster.
Right.
If there's a transfer that we've brought in that I thought is going to make a difference, or a returner that I think can make a really big difference. But what I want to say before we even go into personnel-wise is that this defense is going to be aggressive, more so than what you've seen out of any Neil Brown or Jordan Leslie-led defense. Zach Alley's going to be aggressive. You're going to see a bunch of different looks, man and zone. You're going to see a lot of different blitz packages because we now have the personnel to do that. And starting that off is led by probably the biggest transfer we've brought in, Jamori Robinson from UTSA. He won the American Defensive Player of the Year last year. Let me bring this up for a second. If you guys have not seen Jamori Robinson tape, you guys need to go watch it. What Ty French was sold to us as last year, basically a freak athlete that can slice through the offensive line like hot knife through butter. That's what Jamori Robinson is going to be for us this year. Last year, in 2024, he had 43 total tackles, 27 of them being solo, and then he had 10.5 sacks. 10.5 sacks, guys. That's like how many we had as a total defense last year. Jamori Robertson is a freak athlete, and he is going to be – he's on the DE line. He's going to be probably play that defensive end position, kind of like what Tyron Bradley played last year. He's going to cause havoc in the backfield is what I'm trying to say. He's going to be one of the leaders of this defense. He's got the experience. He's got the talent. He has the prowess. Jamori Robertson is a household name that you guys are going to want to get familiar with for the 2025 season. And watch some Jamori Robinson tape because it is something to watch. We recently brought in Eddie Kelly, who plays similar position. He's from Missouri. I don't think he'll have quite the impact that Jamori Robinson will, but Jamori Robinson, excuse me. Eddie Vesterinen is a guy that I thought would be incredible last year. Got injured early in the season, missed a lot. He comes back. He'll play that defensive tackle position. I expect Eddie V to start. Not much else to say there other than that's one of the guys that I'm glad is back on the defensive side. Curtis Jones Jr., who was part of the 2024 recruiting class, I believe. He will likely end up starting at the bandit position. One of those guys that we haven't seen play yet, but again has the talent to cause havoc on the defensive side of the ball. As far the linebackers is an interesting position because, like I said, there is that bandit linebacker and then nickel position between. Nickel's more of a safety position, sorry, but there is that bandit position that's very similar to the linebacker's position. It's just a little different. Reed Carrico's back. Ben Cutter's back. You bring in a couple of guys, Ashton Woods from North Carolina, Chase Wilson from Colorado State. It's going to be interesting. That's like similar to the O-line. We bring in a lot of guys. You return Reed Carrico and Cutter, but you bring in a couple of guys that can come in and fight for a starting position regardless of who's here now. Going to be another position to watch come fall camp and see who emerges as a starter. Fred Perry, another guy from Rich Rod's system, even though Rich Rod's more of an offensive guy. He's will play the nickel safety position. This guy can hit. We've talked about Fred Perry before when Rich Rod brought him in during the winter portal window. Fred Perry is a beast, and he is not afraid to tackle. I don't know the last time we had somebody on the defense side of the ball where I looked at him and thought that guy wants to rip the other guy's head off. He is going at the offense just absolutely wild. So, and Fred Perry's that guy. Fred Perry from Jack State is going to make a difference in the secondary. That was the biggest loss last year. Had we had a somewhat competent secondary, we probably wouldn't have been as bad as the team we are. Fred Perry is going to contribute to making the secondary not as bad as it was last year. Zay Jennings, 24/7 Sports right now has him listed as like the fourth guy in the nickel position. I liked what I saw at Zay Jennings both in last year's spring game, in the few opportunities that he did get on special teams during the 2024 season. I thought he played those opportunities well. He hits hard. I think he'll get more of an opportunity this year than what he did last year, and more than what some media companies, just not really media companies, but other media thinks that he will. I like Zay Jennings. He's not a transfer. We had him last year, obviously. Expect him to get some playing time even. I could be wrong. Kakora Tarnu, he'll likely have a starting safety position. He was with Jack State and Rich Rod. I don't know. He was part of that secondary last year where we were really bad, but he knows Rich Rod's system. It's Zach Alley's system. I keep saying Rich Rod's system, but he's played for Rich Rod before is what I'm trying to say. So Rich Rod knows Kakora Tarnu. That one will be I guess we'll see. Those are the three guys in the safety position, just Fred Perry, Zay Jennings, and Kakora Tarnu that I wanted to talk about. We do have a lot of other guys that we brought in. Jordan Scruggs from South Alabama, Will Davis from, the Virginia Union Panthers, an interesting pickup. No, I'm not saying an interesting pickup. Will Davis is going to play safety. Jordan Walker from Chattanooga, Justin Harrington from Washington, and then Darren Lewis, who we just picked up recently from Akron. Those are the guys in the safety room and nickel room. Some of these are tough to talk about in terms of a depth chart perspective because we don't really know what the depth chart looks like right now. Right now, we can only point out the guys that we know for a fact or can fairly strongly say will make a difference come fall.
Yep.
One of those guys is Michael Coates Jr., who played for Nevada last year. Similar to Fred Perry, this guy knows how to hit. He knows how to cover. This is the one guy on the team. This is the new Beanie Bishop in my eyes. If we're going to have a guy that comes in, locks down the other team's number one, it's going to be Michael Coates. He can play man. He can play zone. He hits the other team hard, like Fred Perry, like I was talking about. He's going to be, in terms of transfers that I think will make the biggest impact, like Cam Vaughn, Jamori Robinson, and Michael Coates Jr. Those are the three guys that I think are going to make the biggest impact. We've obviously brought in a couple other corners. Basically, the entire cornerback room has been overturned. Jason Chambers from App State, Derek Carter from Jacksonville State, and then Devontae Golden Nelson from Akron. Those are all guys you should probably get used to as names. But if you want to go watch some tape, if you want to know the one guy that's going to make a difference this year, it's going to be Michael Coates Jr. That's the defense. Obviously, we didn't go over it as detailed. We spent about 20 minutes on the offense, 10 minutes on the defense, but it's because of the defense, outside of like 3 or 4 guys, I couldn't tell you who's going to start this year. Pretty much there's a position battle for every position. Jamori Robertson, Michael Coates Jr., those are 2 guys you can mark down as they're definitely going to make an impact. And then the other guys are all going to have to fight it out for a starting position if they want it. The main thing – go for it.
Sorry.
Go for it.
I don't think there's anything wrong with having a whole bunch of position battles on defense. And it's really hard for us to sit here and talk about a depth chart when we're not close enough. Mainly the purpose of us talking about all this to you guys, the audience, was to give our perspective on the incoming transfers and give our perspective on how we think the team is doing on a personnel level. So considering all of that, and there's still more work to be done, I'm very happy with where both sides of the ball lay. I said that I was more confident in the offense, but I'm so confident in the defense. That doesn't mean I'm not confident in the defense. You were talking about go watch some tape. I haven't watched tape on these guys, but I mean, you're hyping me up over here, just telling me about some of these guys. So,
I'll tell if you want 5 guys on the team, offense and defense, to go watch. If you want to just get hyped up and know that these guys are going to come in, make an impact, I'm telling you, go watch Michael Coates, go watch Jamori Robinson, go watch Cam Vaughn, go watch Fred Perry. Who would I say is my 5th? Go watch Walter Youngbear tear it up on the offensive line. Go watch Walter Youngbear tear it up.
The best name on the football team. Although I don't think he's the best name at the university anymore. I'm talking a little bit of basketball. Us getting Mr. Trayson Eaglestaff.
That might be the best name. That might be the best name.
Names on the teams this year, man.
We're next episode, which hopefully comes out next week because we're all done. We should be all done with school. We're going to talk about the basketball roster and who we've brought in so far. So we don't want to give away too much, but Eaglestaff is going to be the guy to watch.
Yeah, Walter Youngbear. I mean, like, I always wanted to play football in school, but I never did. I wasn't allowed at first, then I realized why I wasn't allowed to play. It is a dangerous sport. But I can imagine if I was able to play football, Walter Youngbear is who I would model my game after. Because, I mean, obviously, I'm a big dude. I would be on the line. So I would have to look at somebody like Walter Youngbear. And, dude, like I'm saying, you're hyping me up just talking about these.
What's fun, you know how people always say that offensive linemen are like the biggest teddy bears. I think that's very fitting because if you just look at Walter Youngbear, he just looks like somebody you want to give a big hug. He looks like, you just want to squeeze the teddy bear. Not when he's playing offensive line, bro. He will show some defensive linemen how to protect his quarterback. So,
dude, now we got to make a Walter Youngbear highlight reel, and we got to put in the hugging the teddy bear.
Hey, maybe.
That would kind of go hard.
That we obviously didn't name everybody on the roster, and outside of the offensive production from Nico, Jalen, Jaheim, some of the receivers, we didn't go too much into advanced stats. We're still going to do more roster related videos as fall camp comes along. But like Ian said, it's hard to do especially a depth chart when we're so far out and 70 new guys. I mean, 70 new guys on a 105-man roster is ridiculous. So right now, the point of this was to give you some names to watch, give you some names to get used to, and then give you our thoughts on guys that we are pretty certain we would put money on coming in to make an immediate impact.
Yeah. And obviously for you guys watching, this probably isn't news. This is old news, but yeah, just like we say, these are our opinions on who we think you should watch. And yeah, and it's going to be the same for basketball next week when we talk about them because we're going to be so far out. I mean, we have a better idea because there are less guys on the roster, but it's going to be the same thing. And that's why the title of this episode is Spring Cleaning, man. I mean, you're talking about 70 new guys on a team. It's crazy.
That is indeed crazy. But transitioning into our next segment, what can those 70 new guys do? Why don't you pull up that Rich Rod statement, Ian?
I got you. So you can go ahead and read it, but here it is, man.
If you live under a rock, Rich Rod is a guy who likes to win. And he was on the College Game Day show recently and made a statement that is pretty intriguing. And you should all be watching on YouTube so you can read it for yourselves, but I'm going to go ahead and read it as well. I guess I've gotten too old to have coach speak anymore. If we're not in contention in November for the conference championship, then I think it's not a good year, Rodriguez said during an interview on the College Game Day podcast. And then he proceeded to say, now will that lead to winning a bowl game and all that? Every year, our first goal is to win the league. Now, if you win the league, you're going to be in the playoff. I saw Arizona State do it last year, and I know it was in Kenny Dillingham's second year, but they went from down the bottom to the top. Now, can we do that in 1 year, not 2 years? That's a harder ask to do, but certainly that'll be our focus. So that kind of brings us to our next segment is, can West Virginia and Rich Rod really compete for a Big 12 title in year one? Ian, why don't you start us off with your thoughts since I've talked about everybody's ear off about the roster?
Yeah, you're good. So, again, here, I think there's actually not too much to say here. In my opinion, you want a coach that believes this day in and day out, regardless of how his roster looks, regardless of the resources that he has to do it. Right, you always want a coach that believes in his guys, the guys that he brought in, the guys he recruited, the guys he believes in. You want them to be able to compete for not just a conference title, but for the championship overall. Of course, you have to be realistic, but in coaching, I feel like you have to make the guys believe that they can go where they take themselves. You know, it's sort of the pep talk that we get when we go out into the world. You have limitless potential. Right. And I don't think that we know truly how good these guys are yet, like we were discussing in the depth chart segment. But Rich Rod knows, he has an idea. And I think he is speaking from some place of common sense here that we can be in the conversation. Are we going to win the Big 12 title? I personally don't think so. I feel like this is going to be a transition year for us. But that's not to say we won't be successful. I see us being successful. We can't take this statement and drink the Kool-Aid, quote unquote, as we did last year after the Mayo Bowl win. I don't think we should do too much of that. But I think it is a good thing that we have a coach that is this outspoken, right, and is willing to lead his guys to believe this. And obviously, I want to believe it. Do I think we win the Big 12? No. Do I think that we can be in the conversation? Absolutely. Those are my thoughts.
Okay. I'm going to say a little bit, and then we'll pull up the schedule and talk about it from a legitimate, is it possible standpoint. As far as the statement itself, like you said, should be what every coach thinks. No coach is going to go into the season. I'm sorry to point out Vanderbilt, especially after what they did last season, but Vanderbilt is one of those programs that absolutely nobody or their mother expects to have a very good season year in and year out. But that doesn't mean Vanderbilt's head coach is going to go into the year saying, yeah, 6-6 is the goal. Nobody's going to say that. And so, as he alludes to in the statement, this is pretty coach speaky, like almost a media trained answer. Like, hey, I can't just say to the guys, I can't just say on camera for our guys to hear that, okay, it's year one, I don't expect to do much. So, yes, it is coach speak. However, he brings up a point, especially talking about Kenny Dillingham, in that Kenny Dillingham did it in 2 years, and after off of a terrible year by Arizona State in 2023. If I can actually look that up, I will. But is it really that far-fetched from a technical standpoint, or looking at it from the perspective of, Kenny Dillingham, Kurt Signetti at Indiana? Those are all guys that succeeded very early in their coaching tenure at a specific place. So pull up the schedule for 2025, and I want to talk about this from a technical standpoint. in terms of can we compete in late November? I think he just says November. Does he just say November?
November.
Yeah. If we're not in contention,
all I'm saying is an Arizona State game for $9 a ticket is crazy. But
well, that's right now. That's right now.
He did say November.
He said November. So November 1st, we're going to Houston. So from a legitimate standpoint, I'm going to look at this and ask if we are in Big 12 and see if we could legitimately be in Big 12 contention when we go to Houston to play, where we all remember what happened last time. I wholeheartedly expect us to start off 3-0, if not 4-0. I think every team we start off against, we are better than, other than the fact that it's been a ton of roster turnover. But if you look talent acquisition wise, the talent on the team, we're definitely better than Robert Morris in Ohio. I'm going to chalk those up as wins. It took Pitt a Neil Brown masterclass at the end to come back and beat us in their own stadium. And I think we're a better team than we were last year. And I think the home field advantage is going to play a major part in this one. And I will never pick West Virginia to lose against Pittsburgh. You know, the Rich Rod redemption story. We lost 13-9 in 2007. This game is on September 13th. The date lines up. It all makes sense. This is the redemption story. Rich Rod's going to go into Kansas 3-0 after beating Pittsburgh. So we start Big 12 play at Kansas. Jalen Daniels is pretty much the only guy that I'm worried about. Kansas didn't do a ton in the portal. They lost a lot of guys. They lost Devin Neal. They lost Kobe Bryant. They lost some other guys that were important pieces in last year's 5-7 team. I expect us to beat Kansas. And that brings us to the first game where I really think that it's going to be, if we want to win, we're really going to have to play at a standard that is higher than what we were playing for the past 5 years, which in some people's opinion is not very high. Regardless, Utah had a really good season last year if you take away the absolute horrendous quarterback play. If Utah had a competent quarterback last year, they would have been a decent Big 12 team. I expect Utah to take the jump that they can. I don't know if it'll be, from near last in the Big 12 to top 5 in the Big 12, but I think there'll be a team that West Virginia will genuinely have to compete with to win this game. Do I think they win it? You'll have to see, because we'll save our record predictions, obviously. Do I think they can win this game? Yes. Do I think they do win this game? To be determined. At BYU is the first game that I say we absolutely do not win. I don't think we win at BYU.
Yeah, so, I think you're right there.
So let's assume we win every game that we can up to this point. We're 5-1, right? You go to UCF, that's absolutely a winnable game. We've won against them twice in a row. UCF has gotten much worse than what they were last year, in my opinion, despite Scott Frost coming back. That's a winnable game. And then your last one is TCU at home. I really like Josh Hoover. I think TCU is a sleeper in the Big 12. But I don't necessarily think that that's a game that West Virginia can't come out of Morgantown saying they had a victory. So we're in November, and there's only one game on the schedule at BYU that I don't think we can win. That's, 7-1? Do I think we go – I don't want to overinflate what we do. Like you said, I don't want to drink the Kool-Aid. Do I think we enter November 7-1? Absolutely not. Do I think we can enter November 7-1? Absolutely. If everything goes to plan, if we think that all the talent that we brought in during the winter and spring portal windows, and spring we're not even done, I expect more guys to be coming, announced sooner than later. But if the talent that we've brought in translate to what we expect it to, competing for a Big 12 championship in November is on the table, especially because the last 2 years, the Big 12 champions or the teams that have played in the Big 12 championship have been teams that have had more than one loss in conference play. That brings you to Houston, Colorado, Arizona State, Texas Tech. The last 2 games of the season are absolutely brutal on the road to Arizona State, and then versus a team that has the number 1 transfer portal class is absolutely horrible, especially after what we saw last year versus Texas Tech. But I'm with Rich Rod. I don't want to drink the Kool-Aid. I don't expect us to be playing for a Big 12 championship in year number 1, but can we enter November competing for a Big 12 championship, in a position to compete for a Big 12 championship? Absolutely.
Fair enough. I like your analysis of all that. I'll go ahead and I'll run through my analysis of the schedule real quick. Just piggybacking basically off of what you said. So Robert Morris, we've never lost against FBS. Fingers crossed. I think we win. Ohio, bus ride down to where are they at? Are they Athens?
I believe so.
Anyway, bus ride down. I think that's a dub. The stars have aligned for the Pitt game, as you were saying. I think we win that. Kansas is actually a little touch and go for me, just because you said Jaden Daniels before, but also it is going to be the first conference game held in their new stadium, which I don't know if you've seen the pictures of their stadium yet. A lot of people like it.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't. So, but anyway, I expect the environment in there to be good, especially since it's the first conference game. So that is a toss-up for me. However, I think we win. I think we pull that out.
Don't give too much away. We got to save some for record predictions. Just say whether you think we can or can't win it.
Okay. Utah. I saw Cam Rising medically retired. I'm not sure. Did they get another quarterback in?
Yeah, they brought in. Excuse me, his name's escaping me, but his name is Darren something. Yeah, they brought in New Mexico transfer Devin Dampier. He was, I don't remember quite what he was ranked in terms of transfer portal quarterbacks, but he was up there. So that's what I was saying last year. Last year they had a really good team with really bad quarterback play. This year they retain a lot of that really good team, and they bring in a quarterback that has the potential to be a decent quarterback in the Big 12.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, can they win Utah? Yes. I don't think they beat BYU. UCF is absolutely winnable, especially since it is such a direct flight for WV fans to get there. Literally, Clarksburg straight to Orlando Sanford, and you're 20 minutes from the arena. So it's pretty easy to get to UCF. There are going to be some WV fans there. That's winnable. TCU at home, like you were saying, that can also be touch and go. They can win that. Houston, I think we do win that. Colorado, Coach Prime in Morgantown. That'll be a pretty good environment for us. We can win that. Arizona State, I think we lose. And Texas Tech is a toss-up, especially considering we have a bye week in there. So who knows? But I think absolutely this team can go 9-3 or even 10-2 if you say BYU and Arizona State are the only losses. I think they can do it.
I think ceiling, we can do that since I guess we can do that. We don't want to give away our full, record predictions and whatnot. Ceiling, I'd give us 9-3. I don't see a way we win the BYU, Arizona State, or Texas Tech games. Those are all 3 games against really solid teams. 2 of them on the road, 3 of them in the top. I think those are 3 of the top 4 in Big 12 champion odds. So a brutal schedule,
like we had discussed before, Texas Tech has a slew of new guys, sort of like we have. So they are highly touted, but it could be another case of, Utah is going to win the Big 12, and they finish near the bottom. So who really knows to Texas Tech? But, I will say Arizona State and BYU are probably off the table. But Will Greer at Texas, it can happen.
That's fair enough. I guess we'll see if Nico Marchiol can, translate to what real Will Greer was at one point, or Jalen Henderson. Like we said, it's basically 50-50 right now.
That'd be
Um,
crazy.
I don't want to get everybody's hopes up. I don't want anybody to drink the Kool-Aid and think that we're going to be competing for a Big 12 championship in year one. But we saw Kenny Dillingham do it. We saw Kurt Signetti do it. This team can have a successful season, even with the massive roster turnaround.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so now that we've gotten through that, you want to transition to a little reveal that Ren Baker gave to us. Was it earlier this week or last week? I can't
It
remember.
was earlier this week.
Yeah,
I want to say it was Sunday. What is today? Thursday? Friday?
today's Thursday. Yeah, so
Maybe it was Monday.
anyway, these are absolutely fire.
I'm
19,
glad. I'm glad you think they are.
1965 throwback uniform. I love the idea of it. I absolutely love the idea of it. The helmet for me is my favorite part. The baby blue is weird. I mean, honestly, I have never seen that type of logo until that reveal. The baby blue is interesting to say the least, and it's weird with the dark blue jersey pictured here, but I think it can be iconic. It has that iconic potential.
So this is obviously a 1965 throwback uniform. Keep that picture up. I like that one. That one really shows the side logo well.
Yeah.
It's expected, or kind of concluded that the baby blue ended up being one of those things where it was a color misprint or something, and we just played with the baby blue helmets for 1 year. In terms of, do I like that West Virginia is wearing baby blue? No, but it's a throwback uniform, similar to, like, I'm trying to think of another team that does a throwback uniform that's different colors than their usual uniforms. Because the main things I've seen of people not liking these is, oh, it's a Pitt uniform. Oh, it's not our colors. No, it is our colors. It's the old gold. This is gold, ladies and gentlemen. These were our colors for a large portion of our history. The old gold and blue. That is the old gold and the old blue. They're not Pitt uniforms. They're not Notre Dame uniforms. They are 1965 West Virginia throwback uniforms. And I expect these to be worn against Utah because, fun fact, that somebody told me on Twitter the other day, I apologize. I don't remember who it was, or I'd shout you out. But the first time that baby blue helmet was worn was actually versus Utah. So I expect these to be worn versus Utah during Hall of Fame weekend. I love them. I love the idea of a throwback, especially when it lines up perfectly. So 1965 to 2025. I love them. I love everything about them. I am a traditionalist when it comes to uniforms. I wish we would wear blue, gold, white, gold more often. But I love these.
I do too. Honestly, my first opinion of them was actually not like, how are these going to look on the football field? I'm like, how's the merch going to look? Like, to me
Yeah.
as a fan, I want to buy merch with that baby blue on it. Like, it seems to be one of those enticing colors, like on a white zip up would be awesome. Like, just that logo, right?
Well, I have good news for you. Ren Baker has openly said that there will be merch to go with this set.
There we
So
go.
there's your good news. You'll have baby blue merch at some point, as well as to anybody watching. I love them. I don't have much else to say. I do hope that we still end up doing a Coal Rush alternate. That we'll say that actually. The only thing is that the pant color is not the same as the jersey color or the helmet. The helmet and the helmet and the jersey gold are fairly similar, and then the pants are slightly lighter. However, we were explained to that that was likely because there's different dyes that were used for different materials.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
At least they are staying true to history. They're staying
That's
true
true.
to the way it was.
That's true.
And that's something we can take a lot of pride in, man. So, still, the uniform looks good.
I agree. I have nothing bad to say about him.
Yeah. So, moving on to the last topic, we've been going a little over an hour. We can move on to the Coal Country post spring top 25. And you can go ahead and start this out because I know you made most of this list. So,
I did indeed make most of this list. I've made a couple changes. This is hard to do. I just want to let everybody know how hard it is to put together a top 25 when it's May. I don't have a ton to say about. We can go through, talk about each team. If you want to do that, that's fine. If you have any questions, that's fine. If you have any points of contention or disagreement, that's fine. We can talk about that as well. There's a couple things that I know some people will be in disagreement with. I've got Penn State pretty high compared to others. I have LSU above Georgia, which a lot don't have. Florida and South Carolina are pretty high. You don't see Texas A&M or USC. A lot of people have both of those teams in their top 25. I don't. And then I have a three-way tie for 25. So let me know what you see that's interesting, and we can talk about it.
The first thing that jumped out to me when I saw this was the tie at 25, and I thought it was pretty convincingly Baylor, even though I don't have much information on Boise or Georgia Tech. I just know Boise's losing Genty.
They are losing Genty.
I think they have a solid enough core around them to still compete for the Mountain West, but I don't think they're top 25 material. I think Baylor builds on what they did last year. So conference contention, like we were saying when we were making our little analysis of our schedule, is going to be tight. And Georgia Tech, I know they were decent last year. Obviously, the first game of the season, they rock up and beat Florida State and prove that Florida State are frauds, or were frauds. But I don't know. I feel like Baylor is playing in the toughest conference out of all of them. That's my opinion. I feel like Baylor belongs there. And then again, looking at the ESPN list I pulled up here, they have Texas A&M at 23. So that's the team that they had in over Baylor, which, it's a way too early top 25.
Yeah. The three-way tie, like you said, was simply because I couldn't decide. I love what Baylor did, Dave Aranda and Baylor did last year. I think Sawyer Robertson is a guy to look for in terms of dark horse Heisman contender. He had an incredible season last year. Baylor had a really good bounce back year after a disappointing 2023 year. So Baylor is going to be one of those teams that if Arizona State, Texas Tech, BYU, Kansas State, any of them fall in the Big 12 title race a little sooner than we all expect, don't be surprised if you see Baylor like sneak in there a little bit.
Yeah.
And then same thing with Georgia Tech in terms of the ACC race. I cannot remember for the life of me if Georgia Tech beat Clemson last year. I want to say they did. If they played.
I think Georgia Tech did not beat Clemson, if I can remember correctly.
But if you remember, they played Georgia and took them to 8 overtimes. So
probably the most entertaining game of the year, if not one of.
Yeah, so Georgia Tech retains a lot of key players, including quarterback Haynes King, who's an absolute dog, like one of the just head down and go get yards. It doesn't matter how many hits I got to take or how much pain I got to endure. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get my yards. Yeah. That's the kind of guy that Haynes King is. He's an incredible
I'll tell you a little
leader.
Interesting fact, too. When I was a kid, I had a PlayStation 2 growing up, and I would play like NCAA 06 or 07 in football. And my favorite team to play with in that game was Georgia Tech. I don't know why, but I always played with Georgia Tech. So I root for Georgia Tech a little bit. So I definitely like them being included here. But like I said, Baylor is up there for me. But if they're retaining some key guys, you still got to watch out for them, even in the ACC.
I like Georgia Tech. I like Brent Key. I like Haynes King. To me, they're in the same position that Baylor is, except in the ACC. And then I found it difficult to leave out a group of 5 team. And right now, the favorite is Boise. I like Maddox Magnuson. I know they lose Genty, but Boise is my pick right now to win the group of 5. So that explains the 3-way tie.
Okay, yeah. Other than that, it seems like all the teams you got in the middle have been shuffled around. The ESPN list has Penn State number 1, and they have Texas number 3. They have Notre Dame lower down. They have Florida lower down. They have Illinois higher, which I hate seeing Illinois on here, but it is what it is.
The top 5 could really go in any order. Texas being number 1 is basically me putting all of my trust in Arch Manning developing into what we all think he will. I expect Arch Manning to develop into what we think he will. And if he does, Texas is going to be an SEC contender come November. But again, the top 5 can be shuffled around. Penn State retains Drew Aller. They retain Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. The biggest issue that Penn State has dealt with for the past couple of years is the wide receiver room. They bring in Syracuse wide receiver transfer Trevor Pina. They bring in USC wide receiver transfer Kyron Hudson. So the one issue they had last year, it seems they filled. There's obviously a massive gap at tight end. They no longer have Tyler Warren, but Penn State is my early pick to win the Big Ten. I hate saying that as a West Virginia fan because I don't like Penn State, but if I were to pick a Big Ten champion right now to win it, it would be Penn State.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, they're retaining Drew Aller, they're retaining Nick Singleton. They're in my opinion, they're too powerful.
Their defense is always going to be good. Right now, it's just do those wide receivers that we expect to translate. Do they actually translate? Clemson, I expect Cade Klubnik to make another jump from what he did in 23 to 24. I expect him to make a similar, not as big of a jump, but another jump from 24 to 25. He has a ton of talent around him. It's about time we see Clemson back in the national title race. They obviously were there early 20 teens. I like Clemson. They're my pick to win the ACC this year. I just like Cade Klubnik. I think he is probably my early Heisman winner. I think there's other guys that can contend for it, and I'm going to get to one of them that I'm super high on that I think. Oh, it's difficult. It's between him and Cade Klubnik to win the Heisman in my eyes. Notre Dame, it basically comes down to can C.J. Carr, their incoming quarterback, does he have enough talent to take Notre Dame there? Everybody around him is going to be good. They keep Jadarian Price. They keep Jeremiah Love. Notre Dame's going to be a good team again. And if you look at their schedule, they have a schedule to go 12-0. They had a schedule to go 12-0 last year and lost to Northern Illinois. If they are at a similar level that they were last year, they'll be 12-0. And then Ohio State is Ohio State. So the top 5, I think can literally go in any order, and I would not be mad. If you had Ohio State 1 and Texas 5, I would not be mad at you.
That's fair. Speaking of which, again, it is a way too early top 25, but strength of schedule comes into play here somewhere. And I know you just mentioned Notre Dame has a schedule to go 12-0. How do you think that weighs out in the playoff picture, not just for them, but for everybody?
So if Notre Dame goes 12-0, they're the 5 seed. They are, and barring there aren't seeding changes to the playoff, Notre Dame's the 5 seed. Because they can't win a conference championship. So I'm gonna, go out on a limb, say they go 12-0. So say they make the 5 seed. If everything goes south for some other teams, like let's say Texas does win the SEC, but they lose a game or two, then you've got a 12-0 Notre Dame with a first round game, whereas Texas is 10-2 without a first round game.
Yep.
So that'll be interesting to see because I do think Notre Dame has the easiest schedule out of everybody in the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it'll be interesting to see play out. Playoffs, man. Something's got to give. Something's got to give.
Yep. You love them and you hate them.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, I think it's a pretty solid top 25 list overall. Like you were saying, some people have teams shuffled around 2 or 3 spots. But basically all the teams that everybody has in theirs are on here, just in a different order. So not a bad list. And
there's a couple teams I want to talk about because we still got a couple minutes before we reach the 1 hour 30-minute mark. I have Texas number 1. I don't know if I said they were my favorite to win the SEC. If I did, I lied. I have Texas number 1, but they're not my pick for the SEC. My pick for the SEC would be in the number 7 spot in LSU. LSU is returning Garrett Nussmeier for season 2. They have an insanely talented transfer portal. They just brought in AJ Halsey from Houston, the safety transfer, who was ridiculous at Houston. I expect him to be ridiculous at LSU. They bring in wide receiver Nick Anderson from Oklahoma. LSU is my pick to win the SEC. Spoiler alert.
Okay.
The last 2 times LSU has had a quarterback return for year 2 was Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow. There might have been somebody else in between there, but we've seen some ridiculous quarterbacks and some ridiculous wide receivers be born from LSU. I think Garrett Nussmeier makes that jump. He was the one I was talking about to give Cade Klubnik a run for his money in the Heisman race. I really like LSU this year. Outside of that, Florida, South Carolina, going to depend on DJ Lagway and Lenora Sellers. I gave Texas Tech the same treatment I'm giving LSU. I have LSU so high simply because of how ridiculous their transfer portal class is. Same thing with Texas Tech. The amount of talent they're bringing in from the transfer portal is ridiculous. Illinois is a little low compared to others. I think Illinois will be good, but I don't think they make a jump from where they were last year. They were 10-3 last year, beat South Carolina in the Cheez-It Bowl. They bring back quarterback Luke Altmaier. I think they'll be good. I don't think they'll be playoff good. Oklahoma is an SEC team I'm really high on too. John Mateer from Washington State was the number 1 quarterback in the transfer portal. They bring in Jaden Ott from Cal. He's going to be a really good running back. I like Oklahoma to bounce back from a very underwhelming and down from their standard 2024 SEC season. Other than that, I don't think there's too much to talk about. Michigan's up there. That's going to be a lot of how good is quarterback play? How good is Bryce Underwood? Is their defense up to par that it normally is? How big's the loss of Will Johnson in the secondary? Michigan, I expect to be good, if not better, than what they were last year. But other than those teams like LSU, Florida, South Carolina, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Michigan, every other team is a team that people have in similar spots. I don't see a ton wrong. Obviously, it's our list. So
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and everything said, every player you've talked about makes sense. That's really all I got to say. LSU, like I'm starting to believe in LSU more than I did when I first saw this list, just because, after we met up earlier today and talked about this stuff, I did look up LSU a little bit. And like you were saying with Jaden Daniels, like they can put work in the quarterback room, dude. And I feel like they can win over Texas, even though Texas is in that number 1.
LSU plays Clemson in week 1. That is going to be a very, very interesting game to watch for. LSU has a brutal schedule to start. I think it lightens up towards the end. Let me pull it up here. LSU plays Clemson at Clemson August 30th. So for week 1, they play Florida at home in week 3, Ole Miss at Ole Miss in week 5, South Carolina at home in week 7, Texas A&M at home in week 9. They play Alabama. They play at Oklahoma. I mean, they have some tough games.
Yeah.
So if LSU wants to have a good year, they're going to have to earn it. But I think they have the pieces around Garrett Nussmeier to earn it.
You said it, man. You said it. I mean, the SEC and the Big Ten are the conferences that are most likely just going to win it all. And when you break it down to the nitty gritty, it really matters who wins those conferences. And like I just said, LSU should be in that conversation. And I think they're going to win it. I really hadn't looked too much at Texas before. I had just really been focusing on the Big Ten with Penn State and Ohio State, since Ohio State, they're the reigning champions. So,
what about Bama? Do you think Bama and Kalen DeBoer bounce back with Ty Simpson under center this year?
It's difficult to say because they have their own system with Milroe, and it worked sometimes and it didn't work. It was very inconsistent.
All I know is they have Hollywood Ryan Williams that I expect to take a massive leap.
That's true. Yeah, I remember watching that Georgia game last year, and he was unbelievable. So I believe in Alabama. Obviously, there's always going to be the Nick Saban tie, and I am a Nick Saban enjoyer.
What about him teaming up with Big Don as the presidential commission co-chair thing?
So I don't actually know a lot about that, to be honest. But, I mean, if Nick Saban's leading something like that, I think there are better days ahead.
I agree. I put it out. A lot of people were like, oh, this is great, getting the federal government involved with college football. My response is it's better than Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti steering the wheel because they don't give a crap about teams in the ACC or in the Big 12 or any Group of 5 conference.
Yeah. Hey, if Nick Saban's in charge, I'm all for it. So
I agree.
So anyway, I think that does it talking about our top 25 list, and I think that'll do it for this episode. We've got a pretty decent length.
Yep.
Happy to be back on the air again. It feels good after taking a month break. Giving you guys a little rundown of football. Like we said earlier, we're going to do some basketball next week. Hopefully we'll have Matt and Jit on here as well. They couldn't join us tonight, but hopefully they'll be with us next week. So that is going to do it for this episode. Make sure to go follow all of our socials up above, YouTube, Instagram, X, and Facebook. We should be making more content as well.
Leave a comment down below. Give us a like. Let us know what you want to see over summer. We're here for you.
Yeah, exactly. We got some cool content ideas. I think we want to do, I want to do an NCAA thing where we just play each other with random teams.
Interesting.
So
if you guys want to see it, I'm here for it.
Yeah, so definitely let us know. Anyway, that is going to do it for this episode. So from me and from Tyler, we will see you guys on the next episode.
Goodbye, America.